Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. We are headed toward a holiday weekend, one of my favorites. You know, we do not take 4th of July lightly in the Kelly Brunt household, not at all. As you know, we do our colonial costumes, we do a reading of the Declaration. It's all happening, people. It's happening. And I hope you are doing it up too in your own way, wherever you are. We'll have a full rundown for you on Monday of how it went. The news is not slowing down. In honor of the 4th. We've got huge updates today. The fallout from the Bryan Kohberger guilty plea. The judge deciding late yesterday to keep Sean Diddy Combs behind bars pending sentencing. Oh, I guess your sweet charm didn't end up working on this particular judge, did it? He was literally making heart signs. He was making heart signs and prayer signs like, oh, thank you, thank you. He thought he could charm the judge into letting him out of prison pending sentencing, which now happens in October. And it was a no. It was a no. All right, the judge is not fooled. The jury was fooled. The case was likely lost in jury selection, but the judge is not an idiot. And he is keeping Diddy behind bars because he is a threat. How'd you like to be Cassandra Ventura today? Or Jane? Or Deontay Nash? Or any of the people who testified against him, which were acts of courage, not rewarded by this New York jury. A bunch of fools. I'm sorry, but the obvious evidence showed he was guilty. Okay, sorry, I'm going back over treaded ground. The House of Representatives right now on the verge of passing Trump's big, beautiful bill. It's happening, people. It's happening. And, Hakeem Jeffries can bloviate as long as he wants at the lectern. It's happening. You're really just delaying the inevitable. What was it? I sent this to my producers. It was a good quote. Stand by. It was from Hugh Hewitt. He wrote, have you ever seen a losing team hang around the field this long? Dems don't understand they are conducting an hours-long surrender ceremony. That's exactly right, Hugh. Exactly right. So great. Keep calling attention to the BBB as it barrels toward passage. What are we going to remember? That you talked a lot? Okay. Hakeem Jeffries is now reading stories of people who are on Medicaid like, oh, not me. Well, the only people who are going to lose their Medicaid are people who were gaming the system, able-bodied young men who can get jobs who now they just want you to work, I think it's like 80 hours a month. Could you just do a month? Most people would do that in 2 weeks. Get a part-time job is what they're saying. Don't just sit there and be a freeloader when you're an able-bodied young man. And we're supposed to cry tears for them? Well, most of us won't. Trump celebrating this on Truth Social, writing, quote, what a great night it was. One of the most consequential bills ever. The USA is the hottest country in the world by far. We've talked about this. Trump's election was making America hot again. People are trying. I'm sorry, but if you see somebody out there with the blue hair and 200 extra pounds and one of those blue bracelets, you know damn well it's a Democrat. You just do. Team MAGA cares. They care about themselves. They care about the country. They're pulled together. Doesn't mean there's no one with a few extra pounds. Just in general, they pull themselves together. That's my observation, having met thousands upon thousands of them. It's all happening just in time for the nation's birthday, a signing ceremony scheduled for tomorrow at the White House. And it looks like Trump is actually going to get his wish. This was his self-imposed deadline. Didn't have to happen by tomorrow, but it looks like it's going to. All that plus the Supreme Court announcing that it will decide whether states can bar trans athletes from girls' sports. Some lower courts had struck down bans in states like West Virginia, saying they're inappropriate. And now it's a very good sign that the Supreme Court said, we're going to take those cases up here. We will have the final say. This is a great time for this to go up to the high court, you guys. Well, we have it 6-3, conservatives to the far left, 3 liberal justices. So God bless them. Take it. That'll be a huge case next term. Alliance Defending Freedom, a wonderful organization, was celebrating the decision to take the case this morning on X. And then there's Charlize Theron, who's making headlines for talking about her sex life in incredibly crude terms. And I would suggest to you, possibly untrue. And I'll get into why. All that plus Michelle Obama is now hawking a new sports drink. Are they behind in their mortgage payments on the Martha's Vineyard mansion? Michelle Obama's now got to be a like a juice spokesperson? What's happening? Here to react to all of this is Stu Burguiere. He's host of BlazeTV's Stu Does America. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. It wasn't supposed to get this bad. Remember the time when you actually were on top of your bills? Then inflation hit, groceries, gas, everything shot up, prices up 26% from just a few years ago. It's not necessarily your fault if you have fallen into real debt. Let me share a smarter, faster, far easier way out of it. It's called Done with Debt, and they are not like other debt relief companies. They don't push loans or bankruptcy on you. Done with Debt has legendary negotiators who go head-to-head with your credit card and loan companies, and they have one goal: to drastically reduce or eliminate your debt altogether. They move lightning fast. Most clients see more money in their pocket month one. But a word to the wise, hurry, because some of their debt erasing strategies are time sensitive, so consider talking to a Done with Debt strategist before you make another bill payment. It's free. Visit donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Stu, great to see you. Happy Independence Day one day early.
Thanks. Same to you, Megyn. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So do you have big plans for the 4th?
Not so much. I'm going to be hanging around with the kids. We've got a party we're going to go to. We do not do it the Megyn way, I will say. Few do. Few do, and your parties, your get-togethers are legendary around July 4th. Of course, with your great American Philadelphia Eagle fan husband doing all the really American things. So we don't do it up that much, but it's going to be a great time with the kids and the family.
Awesome. Well, that's the way to do it. I mean, I just go over the top because it's fun and, we can, and it's a great excuse to get family and friends together and celebrate something we all love, America. But this year, we're not going to be able to have the marching band, sadly. We did have a marching band for the past 2 years, but our band is in Europe. So unfortunately, our Independence Day U.S. band has decided to go tour Europe, which is cool for these young kids. So we support them. They're back. They're coming back next year for the 250th, or I'll just create my own band, which Abigail Finan can make happen. Trust me. Okay, moving on. The BBB is going through, Stu. I don't think there was ever any doubt amongst those of us watching this play out. We never got too neck deep in it because I just never do. These things always work out. This one was going to work out. As Mark Halpern said early on, it's going to work out because it has to work out for President Trump. It's his entire first-term agenda in there. And they're about to pass this thing, which is truly historic. Let me just give you a couple of the things from, here's a Bill Melugin post on X from today. If this thing passes, let's just look alone at immigration. ICE will be supercharged on a massive scale. $45 billion to more than double ICE detention capacity to roughly 100,000 beds. $14 billion for transport and removal. Think about that. This is what Tom Homan has been begging for. $8 billion to hire 10,000 additional ICE personnel, more than doubling the current 5,000 deportation officers. $1.3 billion for additional attorneys and support staff for ICE. $858 million for signing and retention bonuses for these folks. There's more, $650 million for local ICE cooperation, $600 million for recruitment, hiring, and onboarding at ICE, $200 million for fleet modernization, $20 million to detain aliens with their children. Acting ICE director telling him this funding would be a game changer for the agency. This, as the kids say on X, is what I voted for. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree, particularly on that section. There's a lot of really positive things going on with immigration reform and honestly, protections for our country. These are national security issues, and they are being addressed in a big way. And we really haven't put a lot of resources toward this in the past. So seeing a massive growth like this, I think, is really, really impactful. I mean, I think a lot of times we're just sort of, I don't know, maybe Megyn, we on the conservative side, we get a little negative. Sometimes we kind of look at these things and only see the parts of the bill that we don't like. And look, there are some things in the bill that I don't like. There are some spending issues. There's a couple programs in there that do concern me long term that are part of this bill. But there, as you pointed out, this was going to happen. They absolutely had to use their reconciliation opportunity in some way. It had to address the tax cuts. This was going to get there eventually. it winds up being, a little bigger than I think even Trump wants it to be, because when you have people who hold out, there's really two ways of addressing that, and one is bribing them with different things that they want for their states. Lisa Murkowski was the beneficiary of some of that in the Senate, and then the other side of that is, Trump kind of comes in and says, do it. And generally speaking, with Republicans, they kind of fall in line. That happened last night. 3:00 in the morning, we had a lot of these sort of hardline Republicans who, I agree with them some of these fiscal issues that they're bringing up. But eventually, they kind of came into line when Trump and Johnson came to them and said, this needs to be done. It will get done. It will get done by my deadline. My deadline was July 4th the entire time. When Trump says that to Republicans, generally speaking, he gets what he wants. And I think what we get out of this bill is a lot of really good things, some things that maybe aren't as good, but that is the situation when you have a 1,000-page bill. It's just kind of, it's part of the recipe, and you're going to have to deal with it. But I do think we'd get a lot of positives out of this.
I mean, there are so many wins going on the board right now. Just today, it was posted on U.S. Open Intel. Iran has said they will not retaliate further for the strikes against their nuclear program. So that whole World War III thing, that's done. Not only did Trump not start a war with Iran by dropping the bombs on their nuclear programs, he appears to have ended one. The list is very long, but just the ones that just happened in the past 24 hours. So we're going to get the big, beautiful bill. We're going to get all this border enforcement. We're going to get the extension of all the Trump tax cuts, which is sad in a way because he won't get credit for it. People would have felt the pain if this thing hadn't gone through. All of your taxes would have gone up. Everybody's taxes were about to go up significantly. What Trump did was fight to keep them as low as he made them during his first term. And that's great. But you should remember that. Remember that you did not suffer a multi-$1,000 or more tax hike because Trump strong-armed this through. And then in the same 24 hours, you see the University of Pennsylvania announce it will no longer allow men to participate in women's sports. And it's been brought to heel by Linda McMahon, who runs Trump's Department of Education, saying, you violated Title IX, you violated the rights of those young women, and now you will be posting all over your website and elsewhere how sorry you are. I want individualized letters of apology to the women you hurt, which is unbelievable. And you will strip the male athletes, hello, Lia Thomas, of their fraudulently obtained medals and titles, which will now be restored to their rightful female winners. So Lia Thomas, who is a man pretending to be a woman, will no longer be the person who won, for example, the women's 500 at the NCAA championship. The rightful winner of that will now be restored. Riley Gaines, who tied Lia Thomas for fifth, and I think it was the 200, will now herself have, I think, the fourth place. I don't know, I got to do my math, but she doesn't have to share her title with anybody now, thanks to this. And no comment yet from Lia Thomas, but here's Riley Gaines reacting to that on Fox News yesterday.
I feel vindicated. I feel like pigs are flying. I feel like hell has frozen over. So it is a fantastic day, of course, for sanity, for common sense, but I think more broadly for women, for humanity, for the little girl that I'm growing inside of me right now that I will welcome to the world in just a few weeks. I think of her. I think of her future. That is what Donald Trump and, of course, Secretary McMahon and myself, that is what we are fighting for. So very, very excited about today's news.
Awesome. And then I'll just give you one more. So Riley didn't go to UPenn. She swam against Lia, a.k.a. Will, who was at UPenn. But Paula Scanlon did go to UPenn. And Paula Scanlon did have to share a locker room over and over and over with Lia, who the year before had been Will and swimming as a man. And she went on with Link Lauren, our own Link Lauren here on the MK Media Network, and had a couple things to say about this. First of all, she talks about how this is just a first step, SOT 20.
I think a lot of reform needs to be made, but I will say, I don't believe this, and I know you don't believe this, but many people put the Ivy League institutions up on a pedestal. They think they're these amazing institutions. They look to them very highly. And I think there is a lot of value in the University of Pennsylvania and being one of those schools making this decision, because other people, other schools will say, if an Ivy League institution has to do this, maybe they're onto something, and it'll make them also change their ways. So even though I don't value them that way, they still are valued in the general public. And I do think overall this is a huge win, but it's only a first step.
And just one additional bit of color from her on when she was forced to interact with Will, now Lia, who pranced into her locker room with the coach when he was doing a big announcement on somebody new who was joining the team. Listen here to Paula Scanlon, SOT 21.
I was a sophomore. It was 2019. I was a sophomore. I was 19 years old. Our coach called a mandatory team meeting, and he invited a member of the men's team to lead this women's team meeting. And so at the time, going by William Thomas stood before the entire women's team and said, "Hey guys, just really quickly wanted to let you know I now identify as a woman. Please refer to me now with she, her pronouns. I'll be joining your team next season, and stay tuned, guys. I'm still picking my new name, so just keep posted on that." There was something on the NCAA website called the Transgender Inclusion Handbook that said if you are a man competing on any women's sports team, that you can identify as a woman, and within 1 year of taking testosterone suppressant, whatever that even is, you can join any women's sports team that you want to across D1, D2, D3. And the handbook was full of pictures of quite literally men wearing dresses, playing women's sports, saying that they're so happy. That was their evidence to why it was a good policy.
Yes, this is 100% what I voted for. Cracking down on the border, deporting dangerous illegals, restoring sanity in women's sports. Every day is Christmas with President Trump in the Oval Office. I'm sorry, this is exactly what I voted for. It's exactly what I told my fellow Americans they would get if they would believe in Trump, even if they were skeptical. It is why I said he'd be a protector of women and everyone, and remember our forgotten boys too. He's doing it, Stu. He gets no credit from the left, none whatsoever, but he is fulfilling every campaign promise.
Yeah, and it's not just what you voted for, Megyn. It's a good chunk of why he's currently president of the United States. It's why a lot of people voted for him. A lot of people who voted for Joe Biden previously crossed the line and decided to vote for him this time because of issues like this. I mean, they saw a dude, standing on the podium ahead of other women and said, "This is wrong. This is crazy. We all know that this is wrong." They make this claim over and over again. There's no scientific evidence that shows that women are not able to compete at these levels with men. And
Look at this picture. That's him.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know which one is him. But who wants to stare at this guy's naked ass 2 inches away from the actual women, parading it around? I feel strongly, it's my opinion, that this guy is an autogynephile, meaning a man who gets sexually aroused from dressing like a woman. And this university forced all these women, in my opinion, to participate in Will Thomas's sexual fetish. It was an abomination. And when they spoke up, people like Paula Scanlon behind the scenes, not even going public, just saying to the university, "I feel uncomfortable." They told the women to get therapy. Let me just tell you something, Stu. We've gone from, I remember the days reporting on this show, it was 2 studios ago, about what was happening with Lia Thomas and what was happening at UPenn and the damned therapy that they told the women to get. And no one was speaking out at that time. They were too scared. And then one by one, they started to. Paula Scanlon came out. She was one of the first. Riley Gaines hadn't even spoken out. Riley, at the beginning, wasn't speaking out about it. We didn't know her name. We knew she had tied. That was it. And finally, she found her voice, and now she's become a national champion, the face, really, of this movement, because she's been totally courageous. Look how far we've come, because women did find their voices. And I have to say, those women and many others got to President Trump, made him listen, explained to him that a woman cannot become a man and that it's not kind to pretend otherwise. And he came fully on board our team and now is fixing it. University by university, institution by institution, he's fixing it. The University of Pennsylvania did not want to bend the knee, but he made them, Stu.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think it's amazing because I almost had forgotten that was kind of Trump's initial position, was sort of a live and let live. Let's not get involved in any of this. And it shows that he will consider, people see him as this rigid character that never will think about anybody else's opinion. Obviously not true. This is a good example of it. And he has become an incredible advocate for this. He's correcting these obvious wrongs. And it's been pretty impressive. And I will say, it goes, you bring up maybe his sexual proclivities, whatever they may be. It's a fascinating thing to highlight in the supposed Me Too era, right? That these college girls were forced to be in a changing room with in a locker room, changing in front of some guy who God only knows what his motivation was to be there. It's revolting. Everyone knows that we were kicking people out of their jobs for making off-color jokes for several years, right. and we're expecting college girls, people's daughters, to be in these rooms with men that are naked, that they don't want to be near. I mean, it's so obvious, and I think that's one of the things that makes this such a powerful issue for people. It is one of those things that all they have to do. We can explain. I can give you the Journal of Applied Physiology that the science that does show that yes, men have an advantage over women in women's sports. We can go through that data. Nobody needs it. Nobody needs it. The reason why there aren't tons of scientific studies on this is because everybody in the world has eyes. And the people that can see with them. Yes, there's secret weapons to discover these things. And when they see that picture, that very uncomfortable picture that I hope you don't show again of Lia Thomas or Will Thomas, they see that and that's enough. And when someone comes to them and demands that you did it, you showed the picture. I can't believe it. I'm very angry. I'm very angry at you and your entire staff. When people see that photo, and the second part of this is important. When someone comes to them and says they're wrong for what they saw, that the thing that they have known and every human being has known since the beginning of time is wrong, and you're a hateful person and a bad person for saying that, it turns them on the entire movement, right? It turns them on. Wait a minute. If you're telling me that's wrong, what else are you lying about? And that was a major, major point. I mean, you look through all these biographies. I know you talked to Jake Tapper, the stories about the election. I know you talked to Jake Tapper about his. There's been several. All of them show the major effect that came from that one Trump ad, which was, Kamala Harris is for they, them, Trump is for you. That ad was a turning point in this campaign. It is central. It is a really, really important issue because it not only is great for women, for people like Riley Gaines, for my daughter who is in gymnastics, it's really important for all of them. It also tells the entire story. And people saw that and were able to summarize it easily, and it made a massive difference.
It's happening. Trump made UPenn bend the knee by sicking Linda McMahon on them, noting that this was a violation of girls' rights under Title IX. Trump issued the executive order restoring sanity to Title IX and making clear what it stands for. The U.S. Supreme Court taking up the lower courts, striking down of bans on allowing this in state after state. They're ready. They're going to do the right thing. I guarantee it. I guess I shouldn't say guarantee, but I feel very strongly that this U.S. Supreme Court is going to do the right thing and say that states absolutely have the right to ban this, and sanity will be restored there. And so bit by bit, it's happening. On top of all that, and there's a lot. Look, the fight's not over. There's a USA cyclist man who just stole a woman's title in the national championship yesterday. So it's not over, but that's outside of the college context. Look at him. Look at him standing. You know which one he is. The woman who actually won, who came in second, but she's the actual winner. She said, "I'm not getting on the damn podium. No." So that's why there's not two people over on the one side, because the second place finisher, who's really the winner, said, "I'm not showing up. This is bullshit." And by the way, she said, "I wish somebody had told me there was going to be a man competing before I spent thousands of dollars on plane tickets to fly cross country, to get there, to do training. Just tell me if I'm going to have to compete against somebody obviously I can't win, right? This is a waste of my time, my efforts." So there's work to be done. But there's so many positive things happening all around Trump and the Trump presidency. I mean, we could really spend every day, all day on them. Another one is the crushing blows he's dealing to the media. Okay, so there's a couple of headlines there. Number one, CBS News just waved the white flag in that litigation he filed against them, which honestly was like such a stretch for, I mean, I'm not defending what CBS did at all with that Kamala Harris interview, but to turn it into a multi-billion-dollar claim as Trump did down in Texas in some violation of like the fair marketing principles, I can't remember, but it was a stretch. He basically won. They just settled the case for $16 million. And according to Fox News, there's an additional 8-figure payout coming by CBS in the form of advertisements and possibly PSAs, public service announcements, to promote conservative causes. Now, a Paramount or CBS spokesperson has said that's not necessarily right, but I think that reporting was matched by another news outlet today that it is right. And even without that, the $16 million settlement, which is going to go to the Trump library, it's going to be the nicest library ever, is monumental. I mean, like it's momentous that he brought ABC News to heel after George Stephanopoulos' defamation of Trump. And now he has CBS News out there paying him $16 million for what was clearly a report that was manipulated in order to influence an election. No one can tell me different.
Yeah, this one's pretty shocking to me, honestly. I was nervous about whether we would just lose our sense of figuring out whether boys were boys and girls were girls. There was a part of me at the time that was like, gosh, are we really going to go down this road? But I'm not shocked that we eventually came to our senses on that one and are coming to our senses on it. I am pretty surprised that he keeps getting these major media institutions to go along with him on this and give him these large payments, mostly because, I mean, these are basically ideological organizations at this point, and they are designed to serve an audience. Most of that audience cannot stand that they're doing this, right? Like they are angry. The left-wing audience that actually takes in the trash these networks are putting out on a day-to-day basis are very angry about this. And it shows like he really has put them in a very difficult position. I think it's important that we have first of all, it is hilarious to see them squirm. I mean, it's amazing. I have no low expectation of what Donald Trump is able to accomplish when he decides to say, you're doing this. Like that is, we've been seeing this for a long time. He has a lot of power and he will wield it. I am surprised, though, that these media organizations are going along and settling these claims. I know a lot of them have business that they other interests and they're folding towards them. And of course, Trump knows this. He knows the leverage game better than probably anybody on the entire planet. So he's really, really good at this. I think we want a free media in this country. And I don't mind having media sources that are left-leaning. I work for one that is right-leaning, and I don't want them to go away. I don't want to get sued by the president every single time I make a statement they don't agree with. That's not what Trump's doing here. But, I don't want that. I don't want it to get out of control on that. We do have to have a free media in this country, and I think that is important to protect. But, this should at least send a message to these institutions and these media companies to just, try. I feel like most of my life I had an impression of the media that it was left-leaning, but they had their agenda, but at least they wanted to make you believe they were attempting journalism. And it's a low hurdle to clear, and I thought they were at least trying to clear that. Something happened. I think it was pretty much, I would say it happened during the Trump era. It's essentially TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, where they stopped trying. They started saying, you know what, this is too important. We can't do journalism anymore. What if people believe, the right spin on this? They might put Trump in office, and then the entire country will collapse, and World War III will occur, and cats and dogs will live together, and all the things. And at the end of the day, they sold their soul to oppose this man. That is never a good idea, and hopefully these outcomes are at least having them reconsider it a little bit.
That's why I'm in favor of it. Like the edit was definitely an unfair and unethical manipulation. I believe that. They did it to help her. They released a tease, a preview, SOT, sound on tape. That's what SOT stands for. The day before, and it showed her typical word salad response to Netanyahu's not listening. Word salad. Classic Kamala Harris. And then by the time they got to the actual airing of the 60 Minutes broadcast the next night, it was cleaner and more concise, still empty-headed, but much better than the tease clip had reflected. There is no question somebody realized the first clip was not coherent and they wanted to make her sound better. And possibly I'll give them 10% chance of just giving the user a more pleasant experience while listening to a Q&A between an anchor and a subject. However, you can't do that when you're talking about a presidential candidate. It's important if she can't answer the question. It's important if she goes to the word salad, empty-headed answer. And so you can't just prize user experience over being honest in your exchange, right? You can't just clean up. It's not a benign thing where like I'm interviewing a Boy Scout about how he got this merit badge and you clean it up here or there so that everyone looks better and has a better experience. No, this is a presidential candidate. She was running for the most important job in America. And 100% everyone at CBS News wanted her to win. And everyone working on 60 Minutes, from the executive producer on down. And that is very clearly not only why they did that edit, but why they've done the string of hit pieces on Trump and on his administration and on his policies, and why they're celebrating places like Germany that are arresting people for having wrong think in their heads and in their tweets. 60 Minutes has lost its way. The rudder, someone's lost control of it. It used to pull to the left, now it's gone far left. And so this is why I'm thrilled to see them punished. I'm thrilled to see them actually recognize you have real skin in the game and it could get worse for you. Of course, the reason they settled it is because they're trying to sell Paramount to Skydance in this merger. Paramount owns CBS for $8 billion, and they need the Trump administration's regulatory approval. So 16 million or 30 million, whatever it is, it was the Wall Street Journal who matched the Fox News reporter on the PSAs and the ads, but didn't match the $30 million number. But in any event, whatever the number is, it's a small price to pay in their minds to get their $8 billion merger through. But reportedly, everybody within CBS is absolutely outraged. The only thing they're holding on to is that they didn't apologize to the president. You should be thinking about the lesson here. You should be thinking about why he targeted you and not NBC and not CNN and not even MSNBC yet. Why did he target CBS? Because they've got this premier broadcast that literally millions of Americans do still trust, and over and over and over again, it has tried to take down the Trump presidency or candidacy.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That has been their goal. I remember when this was all happening and I became aware of this controversy of this edit, I was like, I got to see this clip. And I watched the clip, and it was legitimately terrible. And I said to my producer, okay, now I got to see the post-edit clip. And they said, that was the post-edit clip. That was actually after it had been cleaned up. It was still a catastrophe, but it was much less a catastrophe. The media has lost a lot of influence. We were talking about this a few weeks ago when, and I don't even know, you may not even know this. I don't know, Megyn, if you've covered it or not, but there's a new anchor of NBC Nightly News that was named. And
who is it?
This is, I don't know, Tom Yamus, I think is his name. I did not know about it.
I knew Lester was leaving. I didn't know Tom was taking
Lester was
over.
Leaving. Yeah, Tom has taken over, and I don't know anything about Tom. I don't, but that's it, right? Like, I feel like, 10, 15 years ago, Megyn, that would have been a story maybe you might have led with, right? There's a new anchor, NBC Nightly News. Who is this guy? This is a big deal. Nobody even knew it happened. And that is a massive, massive change for the better in this country. And you think about it too, the media is at fault. And the universities, the elite universities are at fault. But we have to also put
fighting
the
them
focus
too.
on the fact that the left is really, really central to this generally. I mean, like, Penn's, going back to that story, Penn's excuse for what it was basically like, well, we followed the rules at the time. This is what they told us we were supposed to do. And like, part of that's a cop-out. Like, they should stand up for the basic truths of human anatomy. They should respect their students, all of that. They did a terrible job and deserve everything they're getting. But also the fact that, like, this was what was expected out of these universities is significant. I mean, this was being jammed down by the highest levels throughout our university system. The same thing we find with the Twitter files and all of the other things. It was being jammed through the media as well, and social media and tech companies. Like, these politicians, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all these people, at least the ones that were aware of who they were at the time they were in the White House, were doing this intentionally to try to essentially take over all of these institutions and force their agenda down the throats of the American people. The American people, and along with Donald Trump, said no. Nope. We're not letting this happen. They stood up against the media. They stood up against these universities. Donald Trump was elected, and he's making a massive difference in ways here that are really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right about the NBC thing. You can see the waning influence in so many different ways. I mean, no one's talking about, did you see what Anderson Cooper led with last night? Nobody. Literally nobody. Not even Anderson Cooper's fans. There was an article out today on the ratings. My God, hold on, I'll find it. It's a bloodbath over on MSNBC and CNN. Okay, it's a bloodbath. MSNBC, now the numbers are out on the latest Nielsen data reported by Adweek, now averaging between April and June, okay, so that's a quarter, 1 million in the prime time for its best shows. 1 million. All right. I mean, when I was at Fox, we were doing like 3 million and change on the Kelly file. And then on the big news nights, you could add a couple of extra million to that. Like 1 million? That's what I used to get on America's Newsroom with Hemmer in 2007 at 9 a.m. We'd get like 1.3 million on that show in the overall. And then we get like 300 or 400,000 in the key demo at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. on a show we launched that actually was doing very well and had gone up from what had been in the time slot before us. Okay, but now they're getting 1 million in the prime time. Prime time. Any show on the Fox News prime time that would, even today, especially because now, it's inflated under Trump at Fox, that was getting 1 million in the prime time, you get fired. The anchor would get fired. Okay, and in the key demo of 25 to 54, MSNBC is averaging under 100,000. 91,000, Stu. That's
unbelievable. What
their prime time, the biggest ratings getters on the network, are averaging on MSNBC, a fall from year over year of 15% in the overall and 20% in the demo, which is kind of interesting. I would have thought it would have been a bigger fall given that this time last year was the lead up to the election. All right, I'm not done. Even worse is in the day on MSNBC. Total viewership plummeting 26%, an average during the day of 596,000, so under 600,000 viewers on your average MSNBC daily show, and 57,000 in the key demo. Under 50,000 is slashies. They don't even give you the number. You don't know what you got under 50,000. You just know you got slashies, which means you are a loser. That's really what that means. Double L for loser. So they're getting 600,000 in the daytime and 57,000 in the demo. That's a nightmare. Let me do CNN. They're in last place. They're lower than MSNBC. God, how can you go lower? So I'm ripping on MSNBC for having 1 million averaging in the prime time. Guess what CNN's average is in the prime time? 538,000 in the overall. In the total viewers, under 540,000 people. This is CNN. It's the face of the airport TV. It's everybody knows CNN. No one wants to buy the product. In the demo, 105,000 in the prime time. They're averaging 105,000. So on MSNBC, it's 91,000. So CNN's a little over MS in the demo, but last in the overall. That's humiliating. And that's a 15% drop in the demo and 13% drop in the overall. In, let's see, CNN dropped during the day, they're averaging 400,000 and 71,000 in the key demo. And CNN, when asked about this by the New York Post, who loves to do rating stories, it's kind of funny, they go to them for comment. And they say June was the highest month of 2025 for CNN television in the US. Okay, that's not helpful to you. Okay. Then they say, stories like these are an outdated view of the media landscape and do not reflect how audiences today actually consume news. Exactly. Because how audiences consume news today is from Stu Burguiere and Glenn Beck and Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson and all sorts of people in the digital lane. That's where Americans are getting their news, not from outdated dinosaurs like CNN.
Yeah, that's so true. And those numbers, it's hard to describe to maybe somebody who's not in television how catastrophic those numbers are. My first job in television was with Glenn Beck. We worked at CNN headline news. They didn't even put us on the regular CNN. We were on like the stepsister. And even there, we were beating those numbers you're describing. That's unbelievable. That should not be happening. And of course, part of it is like, you've had, incredible run here. I've seen your podcast rankings, Megyn. Like, there's a lot. There is a different way that people consume media these days. That's certainly part of that. But like, there's also a part of it that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, which is the winning, right? Like I'm a big consumer of sports content. I love my sports. When my team loses, it sucks to listen to the podcast that next day. When there's bad news, when there's a terrible injury, when your team is just rudderless and you've got 3 rebuilding years ahead of you, it kind of sucks and you kind of avoid it and you listen less and you deal with it less. I think that's where a lot of the people on the left are right now. I think they're looking at this and they're like, everything I'm tuning into is more and more bad news. And I don't want to live in that world. I think it's why they get excited when like Zohran Mamdani wins a Democratic primary in New York. Hey, it's some good news. Some people saying some socialist stuff have some actual positive things to say for once. It's really a collapse of everything that they've believed in. And I think there's this tendency on the left, and it somewhat exists on the right, but I think it's more prevalent on the left, that when you lose, you don't examine. You don't think about, God, what did we do wrong? Like, what are the things that we did wrong? How do we improve this next time? It's instead this like doubling down and incentivizing the worst voices of that side. It's why you see a rise of someone like Jasmine Crockett right now, who is obviously a dunce in every way possible. And it can't possibly be the face of your movement if you're going to be a success. But she's getting embraced by the left right now. She's being promoted. Mamdani's another example. The AOCs of the world getting, these huge crowds as they go across the country. It is further incentivizing them to double, triple, quadruple down on the same policies that got them in this trouble. And Republicans are famous for screwing opportunities like this up. Donald Trump, I think, is doing everything he can to make sure that is not going to happen this time. I don't want to take anything for granted, but this is an incredible opportunity for conservatives, for people who believe in fundamental principles, constitutional values, to make real gains. We're seeing it in the courts. We've seen it in politics recently. There's much more to do, but I think we're going in the right direction, and there's some reason for optimism.
But I'll tell you something. The Democrats were depressed when George W. Bush won and then won re-election. They were very depressed after Trump won first time.
Yeah.
And they still tuned in to MSNBC and CNN. And they were depressed. The Fox News viewers were depressed. When Barack Obama won twice, trust me, I was there. They were very depressed. But they tuned in. There were like maybe a couple of months where they tuned out and said, I can't. It's too stomach turning. And then they always came back. And not just on Fox. They came back to the other networks too when they suffered losses. The reason there's been no rebound, and in fact, it continues to go downhill for places like MS and CNN, even though they're already at an 11 on their TDS. Hitler, whatever. Joy Reid's independent now, but she's out there saying these are like Holocaust cages down at the Alligator Alcatraz for brown people. I mean, she's a crazy lady, and she was the face of their network for many, many years. The reason the numbers are still low, even though they're sounding the alarm and they're doing all the stuff that you do when you're in the opposition over there, is their model is dead. they may or may not realize it's dead. The people are not consuming news. That the only thing that the CNN said that was right is that these reflect, these stories are dependent on an outdated way of looking at media. True, but not in the way they're complaining about. People are not turning to the traditional sources of media in the way they used to at all. Right now, Fox News has had a resurgence because the Trump faithful feel as I do, that every day is Christmas and they can't get enough of the news. But mark my words, Fox will go down too as soon as Trump leaves office. And CNN and MSNBC are not salvageable. They have totally sold out on the TDS. CNN used to be able at least to claim it was down the middle. It can't anymore. It abandoned the project of trying to make itself so. They have absolutely no dynamic personalities over there. There's no star that makes you want to tune in because they're really super interesting and you're going to hear something you don't hear anyplace else. You just see a bunch of Trump haters day in, day out. It's boring, Stu.
Yeah, it is. It's boring. We've seen the movie before, right? Like we've seen this before. They get more and more excited and more angry, and the warnings escalate. It's essentially their same approach that they tried with global warming, right? Where every single time it was going to be worse and you were going to die sooner and it was going to be more painful of a death from the sun. All of these things happen, and it stops working on people, right? After a while.
And in Greta Thunberg's case, when it didn't work, when we lived, and the globe actually didn't turn into one big puddle of water, she switched to Palestine.
Right. It's not the sun that's going to kill you. It's the Jews. The Jews will get you. That's where she went. At some point, human beings are like, wait a minute, you've been telling me this for a while. It is the boy who cried wolf story. It's a story that's hung around for a very long time because it's got reason. Donald Trump is not Hitler. This is an idiotic thing to say. And it goes back to that self-examination point. How they don't get that this is not going to work is shocking to me. It's shocking. How can it be that your approach after losing this election is to go back to say he's even a worse Hitler? How could, just from a strategic perspective, there has to be somebody you'd think on the left that is saying, guys, anything but this. We've tried this. We tried it the entire time. We had an old white guy say it and a younger black woman say it, and nobody cares. Nobody believes it. He's already been president. They went through a term. They might not have even liked it, but they all know he's not Hitler. They all know he's not actually feeding illegal immigrants to alligators. They understand this. And, if you're going to try this approach.
We've had strength restored for America on the national stage, the international stage. You're not embarrassed of your president anymore because he's over there in Depends and God only knows what else just to get him into the meeting where somebody else is going to have to take over if he doesn't have his trusty teleprompter. This president is strong. He means business. He's smart. He's savvy, and he's getting real results. Look what happened at NATO. President Biden, he was so obsessed with NATO that one of his top aides said to an author writing one of those Joe Biden books, he thought he was president of NATO. Joe Biden thought he was president of NATO. It was both because he was, having delusions and was suffering dementia, and because he was obsessed with NATO and how strong NATO needed to be. Did he get NATO countries to commit to spending 5% of their GDP on self-defense and military shoring up? No, he didn't. This president did, because it is peace through strength. He gets no credit for it. I wanted to go back as we finish off the hour to the story about the trans cyclist, because you're right, we're done. We're done, pretending that the media is honest, pretending that Hitler and Trump have something in common, as the CNN and MSNBC want to tell us. We are done pretending that illegal immigration, allowing it and ignoring the problems, is kind. And we're definitely done with pretending men are women. This person who stole the medal is named Phillips. The last name is Phillips. I think it's Kate Phillips. And he says this: what we need, there's a faction out there, he says, it just can't stand seeing change. Now the focus is on the trans and non-gender conformity. And he says, what we need is more women. That's what's better for all sports, including women, trans, femme, and non-binary. What we need is more femme and non-binary and trans in women's sports. And you look at this and you almost have to laugh. Like, sir, we're no longer listening to you lunatics, okay? You stole this medal. You didn't belong, and we know that you are not the rightful winner, Kate KJ Phillips. In fact, the rightful winner was Julie Peterson. She's who won gold. She's who refused to take the podium. She's our champion today. Stu, stand by. More right after this. It's time you've heard about Riverbend Ranch. Riverbend Ranch is located just a few miles from West Yellowstone, Montana, and it's known as one of the most respected Angus ranches in the nation. Angus beef is known for its great flavor and tenderness, but the cattle at Riverbend Ranch are not your average Angus cattle. 35 years ago, using ultrasound technology, the owner of Riverbend Ranch began scouting the nation to identify specific purebred Angus cows that genetically produce a higher level of marbling and tenderness than normal Angus cattle. After over 30 years of careful selection and breeding, Riverbend Ranch developed beef that has superior flavor and tenderness. They take great pride in the humane treatment of their herd. The cattle spend their days in lush mountain meadows of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and they're raised without the use of artificial growth hormones or antibiotics. It's real American beef, born in America, raised in America, and processed here too. And the beef is shipped direct from the ranch to your home. Go to riverbendranch.com, use promo code Megyn, and get yourself $20 off your first order. That's riverbendranch.com, promo code MEGYN. Stu, you may have heard that Sean Diddy Combs was acquitted of the most serious charges against him. He was found guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. Now the two sides are arguing over how much time that should get him in prison. He was denied his request to remain free pending sentencing, which happens on October 2nd, I think. He was smug and right back to his entitled self in court yesterday evening, demanding to speak to the judge personally when he gathered that he wasn't going to be allowed to remain free. Because earlier, once he had been acquitted of those serious charges and found guilty on the least serious, I mean, it's not a walk in the park, the time that you'd have to do on the prostitution counts, but it's way lighter than he would have gotten. He was super jubilant. He was allowed by this court to get down on his knees in the middle of the courtroom and pray to God, thank God. He's a God-fearing man. He's super faithful. In between beatings of the girlfriends he's with, he loves to beat them to a fucking pulp and then pray to his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's how it works. So he, at that point in the trial proceedings, was like, the judge made some stupid, inappropriate joke about how I'm sure you'd love to leave the detention center, Mr. Combs. And inappropriate in tone and comment in substance. And Diddy was like, yes, he put his hands together like, oh yes, oh, laughing with his hands, like praying, please do that for me, judge. Give me a break. I threw up in my mouth. And then by the time they got back at 5 o'clock to actually issue a ruling on whether he could stay free, the judge, who was a newbie, had apparently spoke with some more seasoned judges on the bench in SDNY and said, get your ass back to prison. And at that point, Diddy reportedly looked stunned and forlorn, and his newfound hubris walked out the door with him because he was like, I just need to speak to the judge directly. He's convinced he's Diddy. He can charm his way out of anything. And I do believe his wealth, his fame, his swagger charmed this jury right out of finding that he had sex trafficked these women, not to mention guilty of the RICO claim, which I think they had him dead to rights on. So now they're arguing about whether he should get 2 years in jail per the defense, or 4 to 5 years in jail per the prosecution, and he'll already get time served for the 10 months in prison. What do you make of all these results?
Disturbing in a big way, shocking, I think. It was one of those things that as an outsider, you're watching this and you're seeing all these accusations, you're seeing all these terrible things, and it's hard to know what to make of it when it comes to the legal aspects, right? Sometimes I will say as an observer and not a legal expert like you, Megyn, like I see these things and sometimes I'm like, I don't even understand that result. You watch it from sort of a gut instinct at some level. And as I'm watching this, I'm seeing, you see these text messages. They tried to promote the text messages that looked like, maybe these girls were into this, at least at one point, and all of this, and it goes back and forth. And I just, watching him celebrate afterward, I was just brought back to the fact that I'm pretty sure I experienced, which was watching a video in which he beat the hell out of a woman in a hotel. Like that happened, right? Like that was a real thing. It wasn't AI. Multiple times. And, that didn't even seem to be dealt with here. It seemed to be like, oh, well, did he sex traffic these women? Was he using force to convince them to commit these acts of commercial sex, or was it just
coercion? It doesn't have to be physical force. Right.
Coercion. Yeah. Or even a threat of force is one of the standards, right? I think there's 4 standards.
Force, fraud, or coercion.
Regardless,
but yes.
Regardless, what do you mean? He didn't use force. He did. I saw it. I watched the video. I saw this happen, and I think that's why it's so shocking to the American people. Like, these are things that are so overtly over the line. If you do that thing that I saw on video one time, I never want to see you ever walking around again for any reason outside of a prison cell. Period. Yeah. That is already the fact that you can bring yourself over that line to do it just one time under any circumstance is more than enough. And, I don't know what legal loophole. I don't know if it was, they just thought they liked his songs from the 90s. I have no idea what the jury was thinking here. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But at the end of the day, what is right is the fact that a person who does that is not available in public to be able to do it again. And the fact that that might happen in a few years or maybe less is a catastrophe.
Well, look at this. Here's Deadline's Dominic Patton with a different prediction. Top 5.
I hate to say this, but in America, you can just ask Bill Clinton, if you say sorry enough, eventually enough people forgive you. Being that he can now legitimately say he got off on the majority of these counts from a prosecution who way overreached and underplayed. Again, I don't understand why you do RICO, but you only charge one guy. Like, maybe you need to look up what RICO is. To that, I think that you are going to see how he plays out the next few years of his career, given or given not, whatever the prison sentence might be. I don't think we've seen the end of Sean Diddy Combs.
Oh, my God. Sean Diddy Combs, in my opinion, is an animal. He is an animal, serial woman abuser who is a disgusting pervert to boot. The testimonials right up to the moment he was arrested, when he knew he was under federal investigation, he was still doing this with Jane, not just the freak-offs where she didn't want to do it and he was making her go back out and do it, but the beatings. He never stopped. He loves to beat women. He gets a real Jones out of beating the hell out of women who are a fraction of his size. He thinks it makes him super manly. It makes him feel really powerful and strong and in control. It's so fun watching them bleed and need plastic surgeons and cower in fear and roll up in a ball to protect their internal organs and play dead so he might lay off of them and jump into the arms of the escort you've hired, shaking because they're so terrified of him. That makes him feel like a real man. But you know what? We're a real forgiving country. So sure, he could have a second act. It's a no. It's disgusting. How are we even having that discussion on the heels of this? I don't care that it didn't rise to the level in these 12 people's minds of beyond a reasonable doubt for sex trafficking. There's no question he did the beatings. He didn't even dispute it, Stu.
How could he? It was on video. There's no way to dispute it. It happened. We all saw it. You're right. He didn't even dispute it. And I don't know. We've had such an optimistic first hour in our chat.
We'll get back there. We'll get back there.
Yeah, maybe I'm caught in that world where I don't think the American people are going to widely embrace him again. I hope he doesn't have a second act. I hope he never gets out of prison. My guess is he will eventually, and he probably will attempt it. He's a man that wants attention and certainly craves it. I really hope the American people don't do that, but we are at a strange place. I mean, we just went through several months of half the country telling us an illegal immigrant who was shipped to El Salvador was actually a hero, even though he also had beat his wife. And we were supposed to embrace him and be worried about protecting him rather than protecting the women that they were beating.
It's true.
That's a society that is at least partially insane. when you see something like this on video, the reaction should be really clear. It should be revulsion, and our laws should be set up to make sure something like that doesn't happen. They shouldn't be set up for all of us to sit here and whine about, some illegal immigrant that came in and has committed multiple crimes, including physical abuse. That shouldn't be the thing we're looking to protect. That shouldn't be the thing we're all on TV yelling about, and we're all excited about making sure he's protected and can get back with his wonderful family life, which seems to involve fists a little bit too often for my taste. Instead, we should be able to unite around this. I mean, Combs isn't even a political figure, which maybe makes things more divisive. He's a celebrity. And, I saw outside of the courtroom people cheering, celebrating the fact that he had only been convicted on these minor charges. Putting baby oil on stuff like it was some hilarious thing. I saw some guy, you probably saw the same guy with the T-shirt that said, Frico is not a Rico. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, what sickness has to get into your brain to not only maybe disagree with me and you on the merits of this case, but to want to print a T-shirt and stand out and celebrate a man who we all saw beat up a woman on video. To even if he didn't do that, to just celebrate, a level of sexual deviancy that used to be really easy to just to look down upon and say was a bad idea. All this stuff is now, praised and celebrated by a portion of the population that I think is small as a number, but way too big on an absolute basis.
It's disgusting. I'm forlorn about the Diddy result. I really am. I hope this judge gives him the maximum he can possibly give him. I really do. I hope he gets 10 years or more, because he's guilty on 2 counts that could hold a 10-year sentence. I don't think that's going to happen. And unfortunately, SDNY judges have a reputation for sentencing under the sentencing guidelines. Who knows why? Maybe it's just a more liberal town, or they're worried about overcrowding. But it doesn't look like he's going to do too much time. We'll find out on October 2nd. Another follow-up on a case we were live for many hours on yesterday, Bryan Kohberger. We talked about this. We had a very, very smart panel watching him plead guilty and then analyzing it right after. We had Matt Murphy, who's a lifetime prosecutor, putting bad guys, including 8 serial killers, in jail. And we had Howard Bloom, who has had tons of exclusives on this case and really has been leading the reporting. And Phil Holloway joined us as well. And one of the things we all reacted to after we watched the hearing with this judge who allowed a guilty plea on the murder of those 4 young people in Idaho, as opposed to having a trial where the death penalty would remain on the table, was that he opened the hearing yesterday with a little lecture for Steve Gonsalves, the father of Kaylee Gonsalves, one of the murder victims. And he didn't mention him by name, but he started the hearing by saying, some people close to this case have asked others to call this court, and that is totally inappropriate and out of line. I haven't listened to the messages, I haven't read the emails, and I won't, because I will not be influenced by anything other than the law and the facts. Okay, fine. You shouldn't be influenced by anything other than the law and the facts. But how about you don't open the hearing where you are taking the guilty plea of a man who murdered 4 young people by chastising one of their parents for a moment of anger in which he asked for you to have to deal with a couple of angry calls. What in the actual F? So now Steve Gonsalves, he noticed it too. My panel and I picked up on it right away. And Steve Gonsalves, the dad, he noticed it too, because it was one of the first things he commented on when he spoke last night. He actually went on with on Ashley Banfield's show, and here he is speaking to what Judge Hippler, 2 Ps, did yesterday in SOT 6.
4 souls were lost for one Brian. Brian's not worth one of these people, let alone 4. And I'll never accept a deal where one frickin' Brian gets locked up in daycare for frickin' adults. And that's supposed to be equivalent to 4 souls, 4 Idahoans, 4 of us, guys, 4 of us in college doing everything to the best of our ability. One loser from Pennsylvania is in his life, in our system, taking care of him. That's equivalent. That's equivalent. you need to keep calling. You need to keep calling people like Hitler. And maybe he doesn't get reelected. Maybe he needs to pick up that phone and hear those calls and understand who he represents. Because this is Idaho, and we hold you accountable.
Okay, and then he gave a paper statement after the appearance. It was posted by Brian Enton of News Nation yesterday after 7, and it reads in part as follows. The plea started off with a judge who was angry about people reaching out to him, and then went further to stand on his soapbox, stating nothing affects his decisions in this case or any other case, and he has not and will not read any comments. Maybe that wasn't the best way to start a plea involving the murder of 4 Idaho college students. Our hope is that the judge might reflect back on his decisions today and take the high road next time and not make the plea of a murderer about him and his decision. Maybe he will show some empathy to the victims' families who have been in this torture chamber for over 2 years while he only became involved a few months ago. Right on, Steve Gonsalves. I just feel like the whole system out there has basically been giving the families the stiff arm or the middle finger from the start, gagging the family members from even speaking about what happened to their loved ones over the objections of, now we know, 2 of the families. Xander Canoto's family also objected to giving this guy a plea and taking the death penalty off the table, and 2 of the family members supported it. So you had 2 for, 2 against, letting the families know via email that they had cut the deal, and then to this judge opening the plea hearing by chastising one of the grieving family members, a parent of a dead girl. There's something wrong with the way this has been handled.
Incredibly wrong. And, I can understand being maybe a family member of one of these victims and just being at the end of your rope, right? Like maybe you just don't want to go through any other levels of this. You don't want to deal with any more. That might be, everyone has to grieve and go through that process in a totally different way. That shouldn't be how this is influenced. It should be how it's handled. I mean, the legal system is set up to take ourselves a little bit out of the system of emotions. It's supposed to be based on the law and our standards. And it doesn't seem like this case was. It's a fascinating case. I go to CrimeCon every year, and they had a panel on this. And they were discussing it. I mean, it's fascinating to me. There's
same.
They do incredible things there, and it's a great event. But part of this is it's about victims' rights, right? Like it's about these victims being able to get their stories heard, and so many of them get forgotten. And you're doing a panel on this, and they're describing these crimes, and it's impossible to listen to. It's so disconcerting to even hear the details of it. These poor innocent people going through this torturous situation. And I don't know, maybe I think of these things, sometimes I pull myself out of the actual case, and I think about this as almost from, my day-to-day is more talking about policy. And it's like, you can have a country that has no death penalty. A lot of countries have that situation. That's a situation you can have if your people demand it. But if you are a nation that has capital punishment, how on earth does this case not rise to that standard? What else could it be? What else could rise to it? This is as vicious and soulless of a crime that we have seen, in my lifetime. It's heartless and just so incredibly disturbing. Not to mention, it took a long time and made these parents and friends go through this torturous process of where it was denied and the chase was on and all of these different things that led to where we finally got the other day. He avoids the whole trial situation and then, gets out of the punishment that our society, if you think it's right or wrong, has determined as the ultimate punishment and absolutely has to be applied if it exists. If we're going to have this punishment, this is the case for it. And it's disturbing. I understand that, the family members that are hesitant because they don't want to go through any more of this, and I get that. But, as a society, we have to maintain some standards when it comes to a vicious crime like this. And I do think this rose to that standard.
It's about more than just the families on justice, on serving as a deterrent for the next killer. And there's a real argument there that the death penalty serves as the most effective deterrent, and that the county and beyond had an interest in seeing this guy put to death. The case was open and shut. They had his DNA on the knife sheath that was left next to 2 of the 4 dead bodies. They had his car all over the murder scene in the moments before and the moments after. They had him turning off his phone, which was an unusual pattern for him, at 2:37 a.m. and turning it back on right after the murders. They had an eyewitness in the murder house who laid eyes on him and saw his bushy eyebrows and can describe a man who matches his description perfectly. They had the police finding him when they arrested him back in Pennsylvania, stuffing his garbage into little plastic baggies that he was depositing into the neighbors' trash cans so as not to be detected by DNA by any lurking law enforcement. And we learned yesterday, as the prosecutor laid out the case, they had searched his apartment to find that it had been meticulously scrubbed of anything of evidentiary value, and also had his car, which he said had basically been dismantled piece by piece. Not even the side pockets where you sometimes throw a napkin or something had a speck of dirt or dust in them. It was clear it had been disassembled, sterilized, and then put back together. Who does that? Who does that? Not to mention the purchase of a K-bar knife right before the murders, a couple of months before the murders, as he made his way out to Idaho, and then the search for a replacement K-bar knife after the murders, which he clearly had discarded. Now we know he used it because he's admitted it. Right after the murders, searching for a replacement and a replacement knife sheath. And on top of all that, you have this picture, Stu, of the murderer. This is literally 5 hours after he took 4 lives, which was at 4:12 in the morning on November 13th, 2022. And here he is, after having driven back to the crime scene to see whether anyone had stumbled upon his carnage. And at that hour, things were still silent because the 2 surviving roommates were cowering in fear in their rooms, unable to do anything. And he didn't see cops. He didn't see crime scene tape. He just saw a quiet house. He drove back to his home. He had already spoken with his mother for an hour at 6 a.m., 2 hours after the murders. And he clearly showered off. And here he is in a white shirt buttoned up to the top, looking like a vampire, like all the blood had drained out of his body, smiling, proud of himself, giving the thumbs up, wanting to memorialize his achievement, his accomplishment. And for this man, we pulled the death penalty on an open and shut case. I don't know what's wrong with this Idaho prosecutor, but cowardice comes to mind.
Yeah, there was no need, right? This was obvious. You just laid out the details. Anyone can see what happened here. We didn't even need a confession, frankly. There was so much evidence in this case. And, there should be a standard where we're trying to remove people like this from polite society. Like that is what the legal system does in a case like this. We have to make sure that people who are psychopathic enough to go through what had to be, certainly the most vicious attack that most of us can remember, to go through that and then hours later be like, hey, thumbs up to the cameras, time to take a selfie. A person who is capable of that is certainly capable of doing it again, and is certainly capable of really pretty much anything. And so to remove him from our world, our society, is what we've determined is the right punishment for that. It's an open and shut case. And they did not need him to, they did not need him to, I know it's always easier, of course. You never want to take a risk, and God forbid something would go wrong. You never know. We've all seen cases where the wrong thing has happened. You want to get that confession, of course, locked up. But this was not going to be a tough one. This was not going to be a difficult thing for the people of Idaho to determine. And thankfully,
you had internet searches about Ted Bundy right after the murder. You had internet searches on sleeping victims in murder cases. He was obsessed with Ted Bundy. He took another selfie of himself looking just like Ted Bundy in the documentary in a hoodie, sweatshirt. This was not a well man, not to mention all of his writings as a teenager, about how sick he was, about how dead inside, about how he was a pile of meat who felt no emotion. I want to see Bryan Kohberger in the electric chair. That's what I want. I want to see him in front of a firing squad. I've said this to my audience before. I know I'm Catholic. I don't think I'm supposed to be in favor of the death penalty. I don't care. I am. I am in favor of the death penalty, and it's exactly for people like this. He's a failed experiment of a human being. You know, there's something about, he's not human. He's the devil's advocate. There's something evil about him, and evil must be extinguished, not allowed to wither on the vine, not put behind bars where it can still have a voice or get interviewed by press or by college professors. Evil should be extinguished, and that's what should happen to Bryan Kohberger. And unfortunately, because of a cowardly prosecutor now, it won't. Okay, let's move on, because I have to say the one thing about yesterday, we were on the air for 4 hours. God bless my listeners and viewers for sticking with us. The one good thing about it for me as a news anchor, Stu, is I'm so glad to mostly be done with these two. You know, like, what darkness. Kohberger, that case is so dark, and I feel so deeply for the families who don't get to turn the page and just go on to covering other stories. You know, they have to live with this loss in an acute way forever. And on the Diddy trial, we decided as a show, because it was such a big case and because too few people were covering it. I don't know why. You know, is it because it's a black defendant? Is it because they too, in the entertainment world, have fallen under his spell in the way the people around Diddy did? Well, I wasn't going to do that. I'm not under his spell. And we covered that case every single day on AM Update. Some of our audience complained, but they listened, and often on the Megyn Kelly show. And I'm thrilled to be done with it. It feels like getting immersed in scum, you know, in truly in evil. So it's wonderful as a news person to, in fact, be able to turn the page. It's nice to be able to talk about the big, beautiful bill. It's nice to be able to talk about the wins for Riley Gaines and others. It's nice to be able to talk about Joy Reid. Let's do that. That's a palate cleanser. That's just fun bad. She's not evil.
Yes.
She's just fun bad. Let's go to Joy Reid. She's got it in her name, joyful. Let's see what she has to say. She's very concerned about Alligator Alcatraz, and here's why.
We tried to forget about him, but Ron DeSantis is still governor of Florida. He took the Comfy Couch hosts on a tour of the concentration camp that he's building in Florida in order to round up people, brown people, and throw them in a camp because he doesn't want them in Florida. Surprise, surprise, the economy of Florida is going to be severely harmed by rounding up brown people who, by the way, all over this country, Latinos are afraid to go to work. Anybody who is perceived or looks Latino is afraid to go to work. I know people who are not Latino, but they're brown, and so they look Latino to the naked eye, if you don't know any better, who are walking around with their passports, who never leave home without a passport.
I have Latinos working for me. They're good. They're fine. They're not worried at all. Everything's business as usual. Who does she know? Is she hanging out with a bunch of illegals who have committed crimes? Because that's really who's on the top of Tom Homan's priority list, too.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's such an interesting way that they just will take entire groups of people and talk for them. They're always speaking for everyone else. Apparently, all brown people have the same opinion. It's odd because I just went through all the new election polls from the election voter survey that just came out this week. Donald Trump won Latino men.
Yeah, they're in favor of Trump, and they're in favor of these policies.
They're in favor of these policies. You know why? Because Latino men are like other men and like other women. They believe in the rule of law. They actually don't want people. They don't want a society that is run by corruption. They don't want society that is run by ignoring laws of favored groups. Many of them are here because they fled a nation that was applying those types of policies to them. People like the United States attracts people. And the reason that it does that is at least the hope that we're going to treat people fairly and not think of them as, brown people, to quote Joy Reid. The people that are going into this facility are not brown people. They're not random Latino people who are just being rounded up on the streets. They are people who have committed crimes, and that's on top, largely, as you point out with Tom Homan's priorities, on top of the crime that they committed by just being here in the first place illegally.
The worst first. That's what Homan keeps saying. Yeah. Worst first.
Yeah. Exactly. And look, we've got a big problem there. It's going to take a while to deal with that. And the administration's tried to be upfront with people to say, like, look, if you came here, and I have some sympathy for this, actually, Megyn, because for a very long time in our country, we treated crossing the border illegally sort of like an understandable speeding violation, right? Like,
true.
oh, hey, you know, I know it's
Democrats
set at 20
and
miles an
Republicans
hour.
alike.
Democrats and Republicans alike. And we said, you know, it looks, we put a sign up that says 20, but if you're going 35, it's not going to be a big deal. We communicated that. We had a party in the United States. Joe Biden was on stage saying, we want you here. We invite you here. And so I have some sympathy for people who said, well, they don't seem to really mean this. And some people did come and did not commit additional crimes and did live what we would say is a relatively normal life. That doesn't make it okay. The fact that you committed a crime by crossing the border and that we decided not to enforce, and you did it for a very long time, does not make you immune to this crime, being addressed. The administration has been very upfront with those people and said, we're not coming for you first. You're not our priority, number one. Number two, if you really want to be part of this country, if you really do respect this nation, if you really want to be here as part of the melting pot that is America, understand what the process needs to be. You may have made a mistake before. We're going to give you an opportunity to go back to your home and come back through the front door the proper way. I'm a big believer that what the people that do that oftentimes make our country much, much better. The people who come here legally do incredible things. They might even appreciate this nation more than a lot of the citizens do. I put Joy Reid in that particular category. So go back and come back in the front way. No, it's not hard to beat her. Come back in.
Who is Joy Reid's number one guest while she had her show on NBC? Her favorite guest is the only person I can think of who is as racist as she is. He absolutely hates white people, in my opinion, and so does she. It's Elie Mystal, who is a correspondent for The Nation. He's still at it. So let me just give you a flavor of what he was saying after this time last week when we got those Supreme Court rulings, including the one stopping the nationwide injunction thing by the federal district court judges. Here's his take. Her favorite guest, MSNBC, which has no ratings anymore. And this is why. Watch.
Walk me through why you see this ruling as deeply dangerous, not for people who are birthright citizens, but much more broadly for every American.
Imagine Donald Trump wants to do something illegal to you, Ali Velshi. Imagine that he wants to murder you. Imagine that he and Stephen Miller release an entire policy explaining about how they can murder Canadian journalists who are working in America because they're taking the jobs from real American journalists, right? So he's going to murder you. So you, Ali Velshi, you go to court. You go to court in the Southern District of New York and you say, like, I don't think this murder thing is constitutional. It's clearly illegal. And the court says, you're right, Ali Velshi. There's no way Donald Trump is allowed to murder you. We're going to have an injunction. We're going to stay the executive order saying that he's going to murder Canadian journalists. And so you're like, great, awesome. And you go home. And then Pat Kiernan shows up and he's like, what about me? I'm also a Canadian. Ashley Banfield shows up. She's, I'm also a Canadian. What about me? And the court's, well, I can't help you because Ali Velshi is the one who's sued. So Pat Kiernan, if you don't want to be murdered, you have to launch your entire own lawsuit in the Southern District of New York again to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't murder you. And while the Supreme Court is deciding who the Ali Velshi can't be murdered injunction applies to, guess what? Donald Trump starts murdering people.
That makes it very clear.
Very clear.
How about Elie Velshi? Yeah, I got totally get it. This is very helpful, Elie Mystal. Trump, he wants to murder me, obviously, and this all makes perfect sense. There's nothing inappropriate about this analogy.
No, not at all. Especially when we're talking about a guy that I saw get shot on stage. I don't know if anyone remembers this. You know, it's so laughable and just disgusting.
They're so crazy, Stu.
Yes, and I don't. You know, I think this is part of what happens. It just, this behavior just gets incentivized. It's like the person, I assume this person exists. I never see them on television, but there's probably a sensible Democrat that could come out and say, you know, this probably has gotten a little bit out of control. Like, the fact that like every local court is trying to block nationwide policy here, that is a
Dan
real
Turrentine
problem.
would say that. He's a voice of reason on two-way.
There are a few. There are a few that most of them don't get booked, I will say, on television all that often, or not enough. This is something that the Supreme Court has been complaining about for a while. This isn't just some new thing under Donald Trump. I mean, this has been a situation where it's gotten out of control. Everyone wants to be the superstar. They want to be the person
Even
who has
lefties.
this big they want to be the person who stand up and I stopped Donald Trump. I had this big injunction. I'm the one that was responsible for that. That's not the way the system's supposed to operate. And
But the
I think
lefties
that's
hated the
been-
nationwide injunctions when Obama was president, when Biden was president. I celebrated the nationwide injunction under Title IX. I admitted that when this case first got percolated up. I loved it. Doesn't mean it has to be allowed in perpetuity or that it's totally appropriate. So whatever, it's been struck down. It's going to help both Democrat and Republican presidents. It has expanded the power of the presidency. And then I don't disagree with Charlie Cook that the Congress may want to take a good, long, hard look at whether we want an executive that empowered. I personally don't. I like a smaller presidency. The problem is that Congress is full of, not all, but it's full of a lot of idiots. So no one's really looking to see them assert their rights over the executive, because right now this executive has been very, very helpful in restoring order. But I'm cognizant of the fact that he won't be in there forever, and we don't know what we're going to get next. All right, stand by. I got to take a break, and then we have got to talk about the insane case at the opera in New York City. This is the one story I really wanted to get to today. It's next. Let's be honest. America can still be a dangerous place, and you cannot afford to wait for help when you need it. Sure, you could use a firearm, but in today's America, defending yourself with deadly force could have legal consequences. According to FBI data, 99.9% of all altercations do not require lethal force. And that's exactly why so many are turning to Byrna. Byrna is proudly American, hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. These less lethal self-defense launchers are trusted by hundreds of government agencies, law enforcement departments, and private security companies. Over 600,000 Byrna pistols have been sold, most to private citizens who refuse to be victims. Byrna launchers fire rock-hard kinetic rounds and powerful tear gas and pepper projectiles capable of stopping a threat from up to 60 feet away. No background checks, no waiting periods, and Byrna can ship straight to your door. Take responsibility. Protect your future. Visit Byrna.com right now or your local Sportsman Warehouse. That's BYRNA.com or your local Sportsman Warehouse. Visit now and be prepared to defend. Remember when you were a kid with an iron stomach? Pizza, ice cream, hot wings, nothing fazed you. But these days, if you're like most people, you feel like your stomach can be a bear trap. One wrong bite and you're done. Here's the thing. Years ago, our ancestors ate lots of bitter plants daily, and they made their digestion work even as they got older. But our modern diet has completely eliminated these essential compounds. You've heard me talk before about Just Thrive probiotics. Now they have their newest product, Digestive Bitters. These tasteless capsules contain 12 bitter herbs they say help wake up your digestive system for results you can feel. No more bloat, burping, or belly aches after meals, just comfortable digestion like when you were younger. Just Thrive Digestive Bitters helps your cravings and keeps you satisfied longer. Give your gut the care it deserves. Try Just Thrive Probiotic and Digestive Bitters today, risk-free, and save 20% with code MEGAN at justthrivehealth.com. See the difference for yourself or get a full product refund, no questions asked. That's justthrivehealth.com, code MEGAN, because your health is your greatest asset. Stu, apologies, but there is something that has to take precedence over the opera story, and it is a piece of news and then a separate story. The long filibuster by Hakeem Jeffries has stopped, and ABC News wants you to know he shattered the record for the longest House floor remarks in U.S. history. Yay! But it's over, and now they're going to vote on the BBB, and it's going to pass. So, great job, Hakeem. Whatever. Okay, that happened. President Trump is going to be signing this thing tomorrow, and it's going to be big time celebrated. Okay, secondly, Charlize Theron. There's something going on there. She's adopted 2 children. I believe they're 2 children of color. Are they 2 black kids? They're American. And one of them, she says, is trans. It's a boy who she claims is a girl. And if memory serves, there's another one who's a girl. Yes, exactly. I was right. And I think that one too has some sort of gender issue. I could be wrong about the second one. But if a right-wing person like Amy Coney Barrett, by the way, adopts a black child like from Haiti, they get denounced by these lefties as doing something inappropriate, like you're somehow depriving the child of the right cultural upbringing. But I guess if Charlize Theron, who's an avowed liberal, does it, it's fine. So she decided to go on a podcast tour for some reason, sat down with Call Her Daddy, the sex podcaster, who interviewed Kamala Harris all about how much they love abortions. And this is Charlize Theron trying to sound like super cool girl. And I'm going to let you decide for yourself whether that's what she accomplished in SOT 26.
Do you have any sex tip for the girls?
I am the last person to ask. I'm like sounding very cocky here, but I think it's because I have found this freedom in my 40s where I'm like, oh my God. So I just want to say this in perspective. I've probably had 3 one-night stands in my entire life.
Okay.
But I did just recently fuck a 26-year-old and it was really fucking amazing.
Fuck yes.
Yes. And I've never done that. And I was like, oh, this is great. Should be the ones that are like, fuck you. Like, I'm going to have an orgasm. And yet my whole life was so concerned about.
Same.
The same?
Same.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So my advice would be this. Don't fucking do that. For 2 reasons. You're going to have better orgasms. And guess what? Your man's going to like that.
Okay, I think I just found my next parody. She played me in a movie and I can play her in one too. What's going on there? I got to tell you, Stu Burguiere, I have to tell you something. I kind of call bullshit because I believe that Charlize Theron probably prefers women. That's my belief, okay? I'm entitled to my opinion, and there's no reason to get into the details as to why I believe it, but I believe it. And I don't think that she's telling the truth about the 26-year-old. I think this is the way, in the same way I told the audience this story about how Doug and I have a friend, a lot of our gay friends thought that this friend was gay, and we never knew whether he was gay or not. But this guy who was the suspected gay man would constantly make inappropriate, like weird comments about, my girlfriend looks amazing naked. And Doug would always be like, straight men don't talk about their girlfriends like that. That's like a gay man's idea of how a straight man would talk about his girlfriend. And I feel like this is an overcompensation where she's like, I fucked it. I'm sorry to repeat it. It's vulgar. The other girl's vulgar. And they're both really shockingly inappropriate, I think, in the clip. It was very off-putting, but my theory is it's an overcompensation. Your thoughts?
It's fascinating. It's a bizarre society that elevates that sort of conversation, I would say. Strange. And I don't know. I mean, you might have more information on this than
I definitely
I do. It definitely, I will say this, Megyn, definitely.
Let me tell you something.
Like
She's not going to be suing me for defamation.
Yeah, that's great.
But by the way, opinion is not suable for defamation anyway. Go ahead.
It's just your opinion, Megyn. You made that very clear, very, very much just your opinion. But it does seem like, it's like, I guess that's supposed to make her like edgy, right? Like it's supposed to be, hey, look at me. I'll say it. I'll just say it. I like doing that. It seems pathetic. It seems like you're trying too hard. And there is an element there of like, everybody knows that person who is trying to pretend that there's something else. Maybe it's just that she's very boring and stays home on Friday nights. I don't know, Megyn, but it definitely seems like there's something she's compensating for.
Okay, could be that. I'll entertain your theory. Maybe it's just that she's boring and not something else, but okay. She's 49 years old. She's trying to sound like she's 26 years old, and it's inappropriate. It feels weird. She's one of our biggest stars. That's true. Act like it. Have some class. Like, honestly, it's a very strange thing to see one of our best known actresses sit down like that with the crossed legs with this sex podcaster talking about their orgasms and who they effed. It's just really off-putting and feels really it's a turnoff. Here she doubles down on how little she needs a man in her life. Hello, back to my theory. Even when it comes to child rearing, SOT 27.
I think people look at it so like in our society as this kind of something must be wrong with her, right? With women, it's always like something must be wrong with her. She can't keep a man, and it's never part of the discussion of like, wow, she's really living her truth. Like she's living in her happiness. Like this is actually a choice that she made. I like want to just like look at them and just be like, do you know how fucking great it is to live exactly how I want to live, to experience motherhood exactly how I wanted to experience it? And my fucking God, do I love every single day of it. I love that I don't have to share them with somebody. I love that I don't have to run every fucking thing by a guy. I love that I don't have to, well, oh my God, co-parent. I fucking love that I don't have to do any of that stuff.
Okay, I just have to say something about the swearing. I love a good F-bomb. The audience knows that. It has to be strategically deployed. When one really feels it, the audience will forgive you for it. But every sentence, an F-bomb, F-ing this, F-ing that, F-ing God, F-ing, like, what is that? This is like an affectation where she's trying to act like, again, the young, cool girl. I get it. And I don't need a man. She's got 2 children. They don't need a father? Okay. She's super proud of the fact that there's no father in the picture. Great. Good for you.
It's a psychotic view of what marriage is. Marriage and parenthood is not like, oh, I got to run this by my wife if my son's going to play in this little league team. Like that's not what marriage is. That's not. Again, I don't know. How do you even talk to somebody who thinks that way? It's like it's like an alien that dropped out of out of another planet, and you're trying to explain to them basic human desires, needs, wants. There's a lot of real positives that come out of it. You'll be shocked. Maybe if she tried it, she'd enjoy it. All of human history, what we've seen is that people do. Yes, there are problems. Yes, sometimes, of course, everyone has their frustrations in a relationship. I suppose sitting by yourself all the time, left to your own devices, can be appealing for a time. But you know what? Almost everybody eventually gets mature enough to figure out that that is not the optimal way to live. Eventually, people wind up trying to find something that's a little bit deeper than I get to do what I want for me all the time. And that's apparently where she is, and apparently doesn't want to leave.
So well put. There is not a gender issue with the second child. It's the first child who's a boy claiming to be a girl. And Charlize is on record as saying, I thought I adopted a boy, but he looked at me at age 3 and said, I'm a girl. And I was like, okay, you're a girl. As if a 3-year-old has any understanding truly of what gender is and can make that kind of a decision. I mean, it's just such a sad situation. I mean, for those children, for the one child in particular. I feel sad for them. I feel sad that she doesn't feel the need to bring a father figure, obviously, into their life, not a full-time one. And she's super thrilled to be not having that, and sees men as a burden and not as additive. And again, back to my theory, I think there's a reason for that. But I just think she's not who I thought she was. Not at all.
Yeah, and it's just on the front of, this is just a societal thing. We keep hearing that this is a very natural thing that boys want to be girls and girls want to be boys. And actually they really are. They're put in their quote unquote wrong bodies. Yet it's so interesting how the percentage of those people seem to coalesce around people with that type of attitude as parents. Like it's not a coincidence, right? It's not a coincidence that liberal areas have much higher percentages of children who find themselves in this situation, and of course have it encouraged and have it pushed, either on them or just, propped along the entire way. The word social contagion, the term social contagion is used often to describe this, and it's just hard to deny. Honestly, it's not a coincidence that the children that wind up in this situation tend to be around parents who believe this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was standing up for the drag queens not long ago. She doesn't want any man in her life. She allegedly has a trans child, which is not a thing. The children are not trans, and they're not born in the wrong bodies. And now she wants us to know all about her orgasms, and now she effed this person, this 26-year-old, the other day. I mean, okay. Whatever. People can make their own minds up. This is not how I would like to see our biggest stars behave. I have to say, she's on the opposite side of the aisle than we are politically, Stu, but You never see Julia Roberts do this kind of thing. You know, she did pop up. She voiced over that ridiculous ad about how you could disobey your husband. That's getting openly political. That's fine. I mean, I don't like it, but she doesn't debase herself in order to get attention. She doesn't call the paparazzi to get photos of herself getting a Starbucks. She makes sure her children stay out of the news. I respect that. She's fine. She's on the opposite side of the aisle. She wants to, that's fine. But she doesn't debase herself for attention because she's a true star. She's a very big star, one of our biggest. Hats off to her for that. Okay. Finally, Stu Burguiere, our favorite congressman, Brandon Gill, responded to the 8.5-hour speech by Representative Jeffries with, "Thank you for your input, Representative Jeffries. Now we are going to pass the big, beautiful bill." So the big, beautiful bill goes past, and another victory is about to line up for President Trump. Your thoughts on it in the minute we have left, or less, 20 seconds.
Well, he's my representative down here in Texas. He is. There's something about the way he presents these arguments, very deadpan, that is just absolutely hilarious, and he's a joy to watch. Look, there's a lot to like in this bill. This had to happen. The fact that all, not just rich people, but middle-class people as well, were about to pay a lot more in taxes if this didn't go through. And that's the main achievement of this bill, along with the border
enforcement
stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's huge.
Those two things.
All right, I got to run.
A lot of positives.
Congrats on having Brandon Gill as your representative, and it was a pleasure. Happy Independence Day, Stu.
Thank you. You too, Mick.
And to all of you too. Happy 4th.